We are back on Play It Forward with Irina Prokhorenko, immigrant like myself from St. Petersburg, filmmaker. The film is Bean, and it is about your immigration experience and your family connection, upbringing, context, and I love that. I love that it's a personal film. Would you like to introduce yourself? You are writer, director of Bean, filmmaker before we start and set up the film any way you'd like.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So it's it was my thesis for Cal Arts, which was an amazing school. I still think people should go to film school, even though you're going to be in debt. It does let you focus in on something. So I came in, I wrote it, directed. I really enjoy writing and directing, of course. Although after school, I've been a lot of editing. I've been doing a lot of editing. And Being, it came to me. I mean, it's close to my heart because obviously it's like similar to my whole family dynamic. And I did have a larger feature film in mind when I was writing it. So there's kind of like a concept, but it's more just I was focused in on my kind of father's perspective, dramatized a bit, but like he feels like a person who has always been stuck and like nostalgic for like a time and place that doesn't even exist anymore. And that kind of led him to be more distant within his own family. I always see not just like for a lot of immigrant families, I'd say, but and what I've heard from people seeing the movie is basically like there's just within a family dynamic, it's like the relationships between father and daughter, or like parents, and then there's like that generational gap as well. So I don't know. I was just interested in all of that, and
There's a lot. There's a
yeah, there's a lot.
lot. No, no, no. There's huge, huge things that you're biting off, and I understand the complexity in relating it in a short way because, um, there's this entire dynamic of what it's like to be a young child immigrant, right? Your parents make a decision, you don't have any say in it. Here you are, you're in a new culture. There's a lot of great things. You like it, there's a lot that's going on there. You got to learn the language and you're trying to fit in. Kids just by nature, they want to fit in. That's like whether they're immigrants or not. And then there is the generational parent who came from a place of prominence, right? They were a big professor somewhere, and now they're looking for a job, and they're feel lowly. And whether it's coming from the former Soviet Union like myself, or Russia like you, and
It was more of a Soviet Union as for me. I
for
guess.
you too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. One,
Cool.
yeah. I think a lot of us, because my best friend also came. A lot of us came like right after the Soviet Union fell, basically.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, but like our parents still very much grew up in like communist times.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then that's a huge thing. So there's the modernity against, that like prior communist period, which has such a legacy to it. And, all of us have been cultured to rise in the Western world to prominence, study, learn, do this, do that. And then you come to a new country, you find yourself starting off as an immigrant, you're like, can't speak the language, you feel, pretty
Yeah.
bad about yourself. So we've got this storyline that's happening where the daughter and the parent aren't seeing eye to eye for all of these reasons. The first question to Play It Forward is really, where did that live in you to get the kernel for that story? And I think here, the answer is, well, you lived it. So but the actual themes that you're exploring and trying to, as an artist, come to terms with, what do you think was there laying in you, whether it was something that you needed to shine a light on to explore? Where was that, the origin of that?
The origin is definitely, and again, I think this is just a human experience. It's like trying to figure out your identity, right?
Yeah.
So I think I grew up in a neighborhood where it was like a lot of Latino people. Everybody like spoke Spanish, and then I there was a time when I wanted to be like that because that's all I saw, you know. And but then you come home and it's a totally different world. You go outside, it's just there's so many worlds, and as a kid and in that age especially, you're just trying to figure it out. Like, where do I fit in? How am I like how am I supposed to be acting? Am I supposed to just be like my parents? That doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? So
For sure.
it's I think it's that age, and I think it happens even younger than teenager, because that's the whole you're the angsty teenager thing. But I think it happens even younger, you know, you're as soon as you're trying to figure out your identity separate from your parents. And especially when you it's such a kind of drastic difference, and you're like, well, they not only is it like a different language barrier, like there was no language barrier for my, like, for example, in my case, we still spoke, but it was kind of like I learned English so fast, but much faster than them, because you're going to school, you're just immersed in it and you want to
Yeah.
make friends. So yeah, so it's all about identity. And I think somebody even told me it seemed like a queer story,
Oh
which,
yeah.
yeah, just or like they related to it in that way because of that, like trying to figure out how to belong and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I love that. I mean, I think you just like grabbed the heart and guts of the concept. And, it's like the question of identity. I'm into yoga, for example. And so yoga is all about, or there's a huge component to the study of yoga is what do you identify with a person as a person? How do you identify? Do you identify with the world around you, with the physical world? And they call it Maya, which is an illusion, or do you identify with something beyond the physical world? So that concept of identity is just it just goes through all these levels all our life, right? It goes in the beginning, well, who are we, like what country, what parent, what this, what that, what nationality, what color, what sexuality, and then as those things fade out, it continues, like what are you identifying with, your uh, car, that you drive, or this or that or that the other, or
Yeah.
with something deeper. And that's, a question that all of us as humans face all the time. And so that segues nicely to the second question to play it forward, which is after having an exploration into identity and the child clearly wanting to identify with the father and that being part of her struggle, being wanted to be accepted as that family member and having that tension, that's like kind of the core of it. Without saying it for you, what do you think is the film is saying around that message?
Around the tension,
Well, around the message, the theme, I should
like
say,
the theme.
around the
Okay,
theme
yeah.
of identity. What do you think the film kind of comes to a resolution about?
What if you were to tell me exactly? No, because
Well,
I let me think about
sure. Let me help you. Let me do this.
it.
But
Yeah.
it's, in other words, I'm really kind of beating around the bush saying, hey, what's the meaning of the movie? What's the moral? What's the
Oh, gotcha.
lesson? What is it? And you don't have to tell me, oh, this is what I did as a
Right, right,
writer,
right,
but
yeah.
what did you get from it?
I mean, for what I get from it is like you got to go back to the simple things. I mean, he was kind of the father kind of oblivious to her attempts to connect, and you can connect with people in a pretty simple way. And I think in this one they end up just having a walk and simple talk together, and that's how you connect. But if you don't take the time and, like, I don't know, put in the effort, I guess it's going to be a lot of confusion and disconnection and separation that might be unnecessary. I don't know. I don't know if that's exactly the, I don't know, point of it. I think I was just really interested in like the different worlds, and then like generation, like basically the differences and where, yeah, where you can actually find connection. And it seems weird because like you're obviously always connected to your parents, but they could just be living their lives completely separately, and you as a kid you're trying to figure them out, like, yeah, you're my dad, you like hang out with me, but they got their own shit going on. That's they got their own shit to worry about.
I
I don't
think
know.
that's beautiful. I mean, that's, the simple, it boils down to, all these dramas in our life, complicate our life, and they pile up, and the complexity kind of gets, it can be overwhelming very quickly. And here we are where it's like, hey, it's just simple, just take a little time where you're both interested in being together, and there is union that happens from that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
anything that we have to go to therapy for years later.
Well, that's a whole nother thing. People from former Soviet Union are very like anti-therapy.
Right.
Not to judge everybody, but there's issues.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't
No, I
talk
know what
about
you
their
mean.
issues. So yes, I would say my father's been depressed most of his life.
Yeah.
A lot of what I've seen, just like kind
Oh,
of, he does things that a depressed person would do.
yeah. Yeah.
Being a person myself, it's like I think I got anxiety from my mom and depression from my dad.
Right.
So so I get it.
Right.
At the
Right.
same time, it's like they didn't take. I think my mom took something. This is probably too TMI, but she
No, this
thing
is
and
the stuff.
yeah, and then she
No.
like after a week it didn't work, and she's like, I stopped taking it. So she's just an anxious person. I think she
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
tried to fix it at one point, but she wouldn't tell anybody about that until
Well,
I started taking something. So
That's awesome. I mean, thank you so much for just, telling it like it is. I mean, all of us are in that boat. I mean, nobody's life is perfect, and we're all dealing with like some level of anxiety and depression at one point in our lives, definitely. And, the fact that our generation and younger can, openly discuss it and normalize it takes a huge pressure off of it. And we're, like you say, we can laugh about it, not compound it with like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this or I should be doing that. It's, it just, you know having you bring that information to the table is now it's like a whole nother dynamic of like really that film trying to understand, like, as a mature adult, which so much of what movies are doing, like what you couldn't understand at that time and took personally. You don't really have to take it personally as an adult.
yeah, yeah,
um so much of our lives are kind of driven by not feeling loved at some point and being like deserving of it. And we just don't understand, like, what the fuck is wrong with our parents? Why are they acting that way? And
yeah.
then, you realize it's just, their limitations, and you gotta say, okay, that's yours and it's not mine. And, I can connect to love in other ways in my life as an adult.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But I think it takes like a lifetime to kind of figure out all of that.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Irina, thank you so much for being so candid and personable and sweet. I want to ask you, since making Bean, how has your life changed personally and professionally, if you like?
Like, Uh, I mean, it's made me want to dig deeper into stories that I think oftentimes you think, oh, this is too personal. That's just my story. And it's one of those things like it's not a therapy session. You don't want to just put that on to people, but it's actually your perspective can be unique. And like for me, I always have like a little bit of humor because even if stuff is kind of depressing, it can also be funny. So I mean, I've written a feature comedy since then. And I just I am digging deeper in terms of like what interests me because writing is really hard. So you do have to write what you know or what interests you. So since then, I've not think, oh, it's a cliche or somebody or maybe already did something like this. Yes, maybe somebody did, and you couldn't have seen everything that's ever been made, but just still go ahead and make it. And that's what I've been working on a lot recently because it's because of COVID, I've had a child, like a lot of things have happened. but I still have the desire to make a lot more movies, and I know it's possible. It's just takes a whole lot of work and money, but it'll happen. And I just wanted to say about Bean because I really liked it. Lynn Ramsey was a big influence for me for that movie because I love the way that she uses like perspective and the audio. She uses audio in a very specific way. It's like really cool. So I really made sure to make the outside world, and probably I don't know if anybody will notice, but the outside world like very one kind of thing, and then
Mm,
inside the family home
mm,
is very like kind of more traditional Russian
mm,
sounding thing,
mm-hmm.
and to have the mix of sounds. And it's also sound can be just also overwhelming, and the world is overwhelming, especially for a kid who's just trying to still figure it out. But in some ways, we're all still that kid trying to figure it
Right.
out.
I was just thinking
Yeah.
that. You read my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know. It's a good time. Feeling like we got to make some movies.
I think you're well on your way. You're on your way. You're doing it. You're a courageous filmmaker, courageous person. And thank you so much for being on the show and talking about Bean and yourself and your inspiration for it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Next time on Play It Forward, we are out. See you later, Irina. And I look forward to more of your work and having you back on the show.
Sure. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye. All right.